Welcome to chapter 38 of the book of Job. Now we finally get to where the Lord is going to be speaking. Now, it's important for us to remember that this was written probably at the time of Abraham or maybe before the time of the patriarchs. And the things that we find in the book of Job are amazing. If it was predating the book of Genesis by 400 years or even more, because the time of Abraham to the time of Moses was over 400 years. Anyway, it starts in chapter 38. The Lord questions Job and maybe questions us also. And it begins, I'll read a little in the Greek, and then we'll go through the chapter. And after the ceasing of the speech of Elihu, the Lord said to Job through a tempest and cloud, saying, so now the Lord is going to state his case. Who is this hiding counsel and constraining matters in heart? To hide and imagines to hide. I have from me, but there's no from. Otherwise it could possibly be, and imagines to hide me. And I'm thinking, well, now, who is hiding God? Well, anyone who believes that there is no God is basically hiding, and they don't consider counsel of God. God is not speaking in any way, communicating with mankind, and that's what the atheists believe. They're constraining the matters in their heart. And I'm not exactly sure. I'm not an atheist. I never have been. I've always believed that there is a God. But I walked away for a while. But I still have a belief that there is a God and always have. And it continues in verse 3. God says, tie up your loin as a man. Be manly now, Job. And I will ask, and you answer me. So it sounds like he's coming directly to Job rather than his three friends or Elihu. Now, why? That's the case, because the three friends, I would think he would come against more or less, or here, or maybe he just is relating this to Job in a friendly way. Like, listen to what I have to say, and then you answer me. And so it says, where were you in my laying the foundation for the earth? Man was not made from the dust of the ground. At the beginning, the earth was formed, the foundation for the earth, whatever that is. Rocks, I suppose. And report to me if you should have knowledge of understanding. Without God, man doesn't have any understanding, but with God he does. Who established the measures? Now I changed all this, it, which was the earth, because it's feminine, to her. This way you can see what it's talking about, earth, basically. Who established the measures of her? If you know the size of the earth, the beginning of it. Or who is the one bringing a measuring cord upon her? Now, of course, today we can measure through space crafts, I suppose you want to call them, satellites and certain things. But then there was no way of measuring the earth. Upon what are her hooks pitched on? A figure of speech. The earth is not on a hook, but it stays pretty much in the same place compared to the sun, and everything's moving around. Sun's moving, I think. Earth is moving and around and circling itself and rotating. So, but they looked at it as it's hooked on something. It's there. What are her hooks pitched on? And who is the one laying an angular stone foundation upon her? And now, I don't know what angular stone foundation he's referring to. The one that I could think of were the pyramids. Wouldn't that be interesting that God put down some type of an angular stone and they ended up beginning to build pyramids? Who knows? It's something that popped into my mind. When stars became or took place, all my angels praised me with a great voice. Now, this is very interesting here because it's talking about his angels. Now, why would you say, well, he talks about his angels in many places? What's so important about this? Well, if this is 400 years before the book of Genesis, then Genesis didn't mention angels until the 16th chapter. The seraphim that had the sword at the paradise, yes, but not the angels. So this is actually the earliest mention of angels in the Bible, if you consider this being the oldest book. So the angels praised God when stars became, when the cosmos took place, which is pretty amazing. I mean, man can't even comprehend even close to it. And then he continues, and I shut up the sea with gates when it was irresistibly going forth from out of her mother's belly, the earth. And so these gates, something to do with the sea and holding the sea in a certain path, and is exactly what happened. It says, and I established the clouds for her clothing, the earth's clothing, and fog for her being swaddled. Nature and the elements of the earth were made by God. And I established limits for her. I put in places bolts and gates, and I said to her, unto this far you shall come and shall not pass over, and within yourself your waves shall break. And I mentioned, I think in the last chapter, how God has the ocean stop at a certain place, and I was mentioning how the ocean is right behind me, and it always stops, giving the tide going up and down, but it always stops there. And this brings that up. Now, tidal waves are an exception with an earthquake. Or by you have I ordered the early morning brightness. Now, early morning, and did Eosphoros behold his own order. Eosphoros is the light or dawn bringer, and it is named from the gods of the star Venus, along with Phosphoros and Eosphoros and Hesperus are all tied in. Now, it's very complicated here because you have to go back to the original Hebrew to see what words that they used and try to relate those Hebrew words to what constellations were they referring to. But the early translators of the Hebrew text here did the work for us and gave us the names that are still around today. Eosphoros, Phosphorus, Hesperus, which were put into Greek mythology as gods, and they were tied into the planet Venus. It was to take hold of the wings of the earth and to shake off impious ones from out of her. Or did you, having taken earth's clay, shape a living creature, which Genesis mentions how God took from the dirt, made man. So here we have another early relating of the creation. And he established the power of speech for him upon the earth, and that would be man could now talk and converse with one another more than the animals. And have you removed the light from impious ones and broke the arm of proud ones? You control the behavior of man, God's more or less saying. Did you come unto the spring of the sea and walk in the tracks of the deep, the Avisu. In John 6:19, it says, and having rowed, the disciples, then about 25 stadiums or 30, they viewed Jesus walking upon the sea. And do the gates of death open to you in fear? And the gates of death, and did gatekeepers of Hades, in beholding you, become alarmed? Now, you would say, well, what's this? This sounds like Greek mythology. But Matthew 16:18, Jesus says, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against her, that which would be the assembly he's talking about. So the gates and the gatekeepers here we see. Hopefully we'll not know who they are. I want to find out who is the gatekeeper in heaven, New Jerusalem. And have you been admonished about the breadth under heaven? Announce indeed to me how great it is. And I was just watching a video on infinity, and it was very interesting. Trying to comprehend infinity can cause people to go insane, because you really can't. And I feel sorry for physicists that are trying to understand the earth and its beginnings and so forth, and going back and coming up with new contraptions that can go in space and look out, like the James Webb Observatory, the Hubble telescope, and so forth. And in this video, it talks about infinity and having to do with numbers. It is very interesting. And they gave an interesting example. I haven't checked it out, but it said if you were going from this point here where you're at to your house here, and the road went like that, okay, and the road turned at halfway. So if every segment that you went, you only went half of the way to your house, on each segment, you would never reach your house. So if you went 1 mile, if you went the half a mile, then you're here halfway. And then the half of a distance from the there until your house, it would be a half a mile. And then the next segment would be half of that, would be a quarter of a mile. So now you're a quarter of a mile from your house. The next segment would be an eighth of a mile. So now you're an eighth of a mile. The next thing would be a 16th of a mile, and the 32nd of a mile. And you can see what I'm saying, that basically you would never get there, because there's always a number that's there in between in that segment before you get to the house. That is, I guess, in mathematics. I'm not a mathematician, far from it, but I saw that in my simple mind, not knowing a whole lot about it. It impressed me. It's like, well, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, you can never get to your house if you only go by segments, halfway of each segment. And it continues in 19, and of what kind of land lodges the light? Well, the light, what we have, comes basically from the sun. But I don't believe the sun. I believe it's a reflector. It's a match. You can light a match and it gives out light. And God has this thing called the sun, and it's a match. He lights it and it gives us light. But it can't do it on its own. It only can do it with God allows it to do. And darkness, what kind of place? Well, of course, our darkness, when the earth turns and the sun is now hidden. But the earth's turning and darkness happens. If you could lead me into their limits, and even if you know their paths, what kind of place is it if you could go there? Which we try. We went to other planets, and I think we actually have Explorer, I believe, sent out in the 60s, is actually out of our solar system and going on. Have you known that it is so then? because you were born, and the number of your years are many instead of great? Is that do you know so much just because you're born? Now, I don't know very much. I know very, very little. The Lord has blessed me with knowing the Apostolic Bible, the Greek scriptures, translating them into English. But you'll go into the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and you see all these books and all this knowledge, and it's just mind-boggling. You just realize, there's, hardly anything. Some people can be excellent and know a lot about a certain subject, of course, but on the whole, as far as the things of God, if you are a Christian and you have a Bible in front of you and you read the Bible, you're probably way ahead of the crowd. But did you come unto treasuries of snow? A treasury of it is just a figure of speech, snow laying on the ground. And have you seen treasuries of hail? The heavens could be talking about. Have you been up there? Well, we have been up there now. And is it reserved to you for the hour of the enemies, for the day of war and battle? Do we control that? No, all of a sudden, whammo, Russia attacked Ukraine. I never thought it would do that, but here it did. And from what place goes forth the frost? Or the south wind is dispersed into the place under heaven. Where? God controls all of these things. And who prepared the flow of the fierce rain and a way in uproar, maybe a tornado, to rain upon the land of which there is not a man, a wilderness of which there is not a man existing in her, in the earth. So we have rain, all these things, and no man is there to see what's going on. So as to fill the untrodden and uninhabited land with forests, so forth, and the causing to sprout forth the issue of tender shoots. Who is the rain's father, and who is the one giving birth to droplets of dew? A figure of speech with giving birth to dew and rain's father. And from out of whose womb comes forth the ice? Well, it's another figure of speech. It doesn't come forth from a womb, and who gave birth to the frost in heaven, which comes down as if water flowing. Now, he's talking about hail, I would imagine. And who, the face of the abyss, who alarmed the face of the abyss? Now, the abyss, what is the abyss? We're given a certain description of it in book of Revelation. In Revelation 9:1, it says a star was falling from heaven and was given to it the key of the abyss. And then in the next verse, and he opened and smoke came out. And then in 9:11, there was an angel of the abyss came out, called Abaddon, or in Hebrew, Apollyon in Greek. And then in 11:7, a wild beast ascends from the abyss, which could be the same as it mentions in 9:11, and it goes back in ascension from the abyss. In chapter 20, verse 1, an angel from heaven having the key to the abyss comes down in verse 3. Satan is cast into the abyss by this angel, but then after 1,000 years, he's loosed again. So all these things, a place of the abyss, someplace I don't think I want to go there. Other places it talks about the abyss, more or less of the being in the deep water. In 31, and do you perceive the bond of Pleiados, the Pleiades, which is a star cluster, called the Seven Sisters in some places, and It's visible with the naked eye. And did you open the barrier of Orion, Orionos? And Orion is a constellation. It was the most recognizable constellation in the night sky and is visible throughout the world because of the way it lies. Or will you open Mazaroth in its time? And Mazaroth is a Hebrew word and it means constellations, and some people tie it into the constellations of the zodiac. And Esperon, with its tail, will you lead it? Hesperus. Now, all these you can look up in Wikipedia at your heart's content and study Eosphoros, Phosphorus, Orion, Hesperus, Pleiades, Mazaroth. All of them are in depth in Wikipedia. And do you know the circuits of the heaven, the things going around? It's interesting, the circuits of heaven. So at this time, thousands of years ago, they knew there was the circuits of heaven. Something is going around in a circuit, which is, to me, amazing that they knew that. Are the things taking place under heaven with one accord? You know them? And will you call a cloud by voice? Well, that's interesting. And trembling, will the fierce water of rain obey you? Well, it makes me think of people that was all about global warming. And now maybe there is the earth was warming and maybe it's cooling, but they attribute it to mankind. But now, okay, but what is man really able? Is he really able to warm the earth? I just don't see it, because they're thinking if you cut the carbon's pollution or something, that you will be able to cool it. I think that's completely unfathomable to me. And that'd be like, can you drain the ocean? But if everybody went down there with a bucket of water? No. Can you stop the river? Well, you can dam it up, yes, but yeah, not the ocean. And can you stop the wind from blowing? No, the wind blows where it wants. Can you stop the rain? No, I don't think we can stop the rain or hail. Can you stop a tornado? No, this tornado will stop us. Stop a hurricane? No, we can't stop the hurricane. Can we stop lightning from hitting? No. What can we stop of all these things of nature? Nothing. But yet, somehow, some people think man can heat up the earth. Well, I have a problem with that. I believe climates do change, of course, but man's involvement in it, to me, is a questionable thing. And he continues, and will you send thunderbolts, and shall they go forth? And shall they say to you, what is it? Now, thunderbolts, lightning, are they going to say anything? Do they say something to God? Will they make a lot of noise? Maybe that's a figure of speech for the sound that they're making, that we hear. And who gave women wisdom for a woven work, or higher knowledge for embroidery? So the wisdom that man is given by God. And who is the one counting clouds in wisdom, and leaned the heaven unto the earth? But it is poured as earth's powder, but I have cleaved it as a stone cube. Now, I was trying to figure out this here. Now, pouring earth's powder could be the creation of some type of ethereal powder that was formed early, and then the powder cleaved together, and it formed into a cube, kivon. Now, the earth is not a cube, it's round. So what else could it be? Well, you go to back in the Revelation, I think it'd be the 21st chapter, talks about a cube coming down from heaven called New Jerusalem. Now, could this be referring to the New Jerusalem as a cube? Could be. It goes back to creation. And will you hunt prey for lions and fill up the souls of dragons. All the animals are fed. The birds, and we can feed them, but we don't give them that much. They're able to acquire their own food easily. For they are in awe in their lairs and sit in the woods, lying in wait. The animal world God has made. And who prepared carrion for the crow? And carrion is a dead animal. Then they die, and the crows go out and eat them. For its young cry in wandering, cry out to the Lord, seeking grain. The young birds, all these things God is in charge of. Continues in chapter 39. He goes in and gives us more details of what he's done. Pretty interesting. God has made all these things. The most interesting thing that he made is me and you, or you and me. And we are here with a purpose. We're not a rock. We're not some type of an ethereal rock that somehow, I don't know how this light comes off of these rocks that are out there, they're 3 billion years out, they say, and how that light comes to us and how it relates to the rock. We go to Mars, and we've landed craft on it. We've landed spacecraft on asteroids, and they're rocks. But I don't think they're glowing. I don't know where the light comes from different suns. I'm not a astrophysicist, as you can well imagine, but it's interesting. But I prefer reading the Bible and knowing that God has all this under control. He has me and you under control, and we just ask for his mercy and thank him for his word to share it with us. Next, chapter 39. I hope you join us. Till then, God bless.